Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in Bermuda, the government has taken extraordinary measures to manage the crisis appropriately. We have focused on the health of our community. We've been guided by science. We've listened to our local experts, and we have taken vital steps to prevent the spread of the coronavirus on our island. This approach was essential not only to our health and safety, but also for our economy. From a health perspective, our efforts have stood us well. We have among the lowest number of cases in the world. And the Minister of Health mentioned yesterday in her remarks, as a result of our stringent testing, Bermuda ranks 6th in the world for tests per capita and is the highest in the American continent. We've also taken decisive measures to support the economy and our citizens during this period. Although COVID-19 will cause a severe economic shock in all directly affected economies, including ours, the economic policy actions that we have taken during this crisis will assist with the pace of our economic recovery. During this period, we have supported the functioning of essential sectors, provided resources for people hit by the crisis, and taken steps to limit excessive economic disruption by providing support to businesses, and we have quickly and safely reopened our tourist sector, putting over 1,000 Bermudians back to work. Today, I'm happy to provide an update on some of the actions being taken as part of the Ministry of Finance COVID-19 pandemic fiscal plan as we move to the economic recovery stage. They are as follows. In the last legislative session, we amended the Government Loans Act of 1978 to increase the legal limit on government debt from $2.75 billion to $3.5 billion. The decision to increase the debt ceiling was taken to assist the government as we navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. This action allowed the government to raise $1.35 billion at historically low rates to help us with the funding of government and its recovery over the next 2 to 3 years. This debt strategy was supported by the independent Fiscal Responsibility Panel and the Financial Policy Council and endorsed by Bermuda First. COVID-19 will have an adverse impact on the government's 2020-2021 budget. The combination of lower fiscal revenues and higher public spending is expected to result in an increase of the projected budget deficit. The Ministry of Finance's preliminary estimates are that revenue for the 2020-2021 fiscal year could contract by $200 million. After factoring in the impact of lost revenue and additional expenses related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the government's responses, the revised deficit for the 2020-2021 fiscal year was estimated to be in the range of $275 million to $315 million, assuming no cost-saving measures were taken to reduce spending. However, giving effect to cost savings measures implemented by the government, the Ministry of Finance was targeting a revised deficit for the 2020-2021 fiscal year of as much as $225 million. Such cost-saving measures include freezing the funding of vacant government posts that are not required to address COVID-19 related matters or to protect Bermuda's national interest, banning non-essential government travel, and reducing all discretionary spending, including training, materials and supplies, clothing, and uniforms. Additionally, to reduce the deficit further, other temporary payroll or government employee overhead savings are being considered, and the government has been in negotiations with the unions on this matter. I can advise that the 3 largest unions, representing 80% of public sector employees, have agreed to the government's cost savings measures. I would like to thank those public sector workers and those in government-funded organizations who've agreed to actions which will contribute to reducing the deficit. Although our COVID-19 pandemic fiscal plan originally called for a delay in some capital projects that have not commenced, we have revised our approach to not only support essential capital projects that must continue, but to support additional projects. Therefore, some of the funding from our recent debt raise will be used to bring forward some aspects of the government's long-term capital plan. These capital projects will support our economic recovery, provide employment for Bermudians, and improve our quality of life. Additionally, we will fund new projects, such as investments in renewable energy that will reduce the government's electricity bill in the long run while providing jobs for Bermudians. These stimulus measures ensure that there is a degree of sustained economic activity in the Bermuda economy until the expected return of cruise visitors next April. Some of the projects that will be funded or have been moved up include the following: the Department of Transportation, or DPT, bus depot improvement for staff bathrooms and changing facilities in St. George's and the Devonshire bus depots. Improvement to Marine and Ports East Broadway. Interior fit-out for Child and Family Services at 131 Front Street offices. Botanical Gardens Visitor Center improvements. Sessions House of the Parliament Building, exterior and interior refurbishment. Westgate improvements for new boiler systems, HVAC, and water supply system. New steel doors and windows. Solar installations on 6 government buildings. Shoreside facility for local fishing cooperative. Halfway house for the Department of Child and Family Services. Refurbishments of parish clinics. Reconstruction and repairing of retaining walls, and upgrades to Pembroke Canal. In addition to bringing forward a number of capital projects, recognizing the importance of empowering and providing financial support for our community clubs, additional capital grant funding will be provided for community club development. We are continually evaluating our fiscal plan, and we will make appropriate amendments in line with changing circumstances. However, the overall target remains bringing our budget back into balance in 3 years, when we expect full economic and tourism recovery to take effect in 2022. Before I move on to the work of the Economic Advisory Committee, I want to speak to those who preach nothing but doom and gloom about the Bermuda economy, both before the pandemic and now. Here are the facts. Independent international observers have praised this government's handling of the country's finances before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic. Regarding our economic performance, we've reduced the Bermudian unemployment rate from 8.2% in May of 2016 to 4.4% in November of 2019, according to the Labor Force Survey. The 2019 employment report showed that between 2017 and 2019, 719 jobs were created in Bermuda. In 2017, the Progressive Labor Party inherited a budget deficit of $134 million in 2017, and we've reduced the deficit to $20 million in the last fiscal year, the lowest deficit in 18 years. The numbers speak for themselves. We have soundly managed the country's finances, and the confidence of the international markets reflect that assessment. I would also add, the Ministry of Finance has recognized an uptick in development and construction projects presented to the Department of Planning. This is an encouraging indicator of economic activity. During May and June of 2020, a total of 53 planning applications were received, and 81 were approved for non-residential, residential, and solar projects, resulting in a total estimated construction value of $46 million, while a total of 154 building permit applications were received and 114 building permits were issued for non-residential, residential, and solar projects, resulting in a total estimated construction value of $68 million. To further assist key stakeholders in the industry, the government has also made efforts to better streamline the application process, reducing the approval period from 10 weeks to 4 to 5 weeks. This government will continue to search and identify areas to improve efficiency and put the necessary measures in place to ensure we assist Bermudians in getting back to work. Earlier today, I was astounded to hear the opposition leader call Morgan's Point an example of the success that the former government had in attracting investment to Bermuda. Anyone can issue a guarantee to a failed project and have the taxpayers pick up the bill, like we have had to do on this project. But that is not success. It is a bad deal that all taxpayers are left paying for. Persons in the opposition have said they would do the same thing if they had to do it all again. Is that really who we want in charge of the country's finances? This government has taken a different approach, working with industry and the regulators to ensure our international business sector remains strong and is growing. We have worked to diversify our economy and our fintech industry, which is less than 2 years old, and has created 60 jobs in Bermuda. We continue to attract investment with companies relocating to Bermuda under our economic substance regime. So I am confident that our focus on building on what we have, diversifying the economy, making the government more efficient, and reducing red tape will ensure that our economy recovers and grows as it did before the pandemic. The COVID-19 Economic Advisory Committee, the EAC, continues to play a vital role in our economic recovery. The committee has been meeting regularly, and they have prioritized ideas for the retention of existing businesses, growing existing sectors, and attracting new industries. As noted in previous updates, the Phase 1 focus was on quick wins to assist persons and entities in surviving through the early stages of the pandemic and taking actions to mitigate the impact of the economic and financial challenges. There have been over 50 short-term ideas prioritized by industry, and their focus areas include taxes, jobs, immigration, tourism, technology, and new sector growth. All ideas have been submitted to the government for evaluation, and a number of them have already been successfully addressed. Some of the short-term ideas from the EAC which the government has already executed on include the following. Prepare checklists and protocols for business traveler approvals, such as pre-testing, antibody testing, travel and visit protocols to reopen our economy. Amend long-term business traveler regulations. Amend the Employment Act in reference to redundancies. Expedite the buyer process for foreign real estate purchases. Extend the unemployment benefit program. Establish a sustainability fund for small and medium-sized enterprises. Continue payroll and duty deferments at least through year-end. Support entrepreneurs on the island through programs like Ignite. Further economic substance strategy with the Bermuda Business Development Agency and the Registrar of Companies. Enhance the infrastructure to collect back taxes and provide government digitization projects for small and medium-sized enterprise tech companies. The committee is currently developing medium-term strategies which can be implemented over the next 1 to 3 years in order to stabilize and grow our economy. The strategies are being refined and assessed for impact before final submission to the government. Before I complete my remarks, I want to take this opportunity to again thank the members of the EAC for their hard work as we look to expand upon some of the ideas that they've already provided us. I would further note that at our COVID-19 update press conference in June, I announced the start of a subgroup of the Economic Advisory Committee where young people would be invited to present their ideas for stimulating economic growth, job growth, and increasing government efficiency. Yesterday, after 6 weeks of work, the Junior Economic Advisory Committee presented their recommendations to the Cabinet. The recommendations covered suggestions on banking, reducing mortgage interest rates, ideas on better supporting entrepreneurs, and their view on turning Bermuda College into a 4-year institution of higher learning. Everyone was thoroughly impressed. I remain confident that Bermuda and her people will emerge from this crisis stronger. Together, we have already successfully navigated through a wide range of challenges brought on by this pandemic. We appropriately addressed them and so far, as a country, we've done a remarkable job. We must continue to follow the rules and do our part to stay safe. We must ensure that our COVID-19 numbers do not rise. This pandemic is not over. I urge everyone to continue to be vigilant and maintain a healthy routine. It is important that we do our part and help and support one another and our country to weather this health and economic challenge. As I've said previously, our progress is due to the hard work and dedication of our many frontline workers, other persons in the community, as well as many earnest and hardworking public officers. I would like to thank them all. As well, I would like to thank the team at the Ministry of Finance and our industry partners and stakeholders for their tremendous assistance and support as we continue strengthening our economy. Thank you.
Okay, question two. Jonathan, we'll start with you.
I just have one quick one, if I could. Not them, is
Just give me a second, Jonathan. Let me just.
Oh, there we go, Mike. Thank you for that. Sorry. Just one quick one there, Minister. I think I caught it right. We are looking at a deficit, given the cost savings that we've undertaken so far, figure of 225 million is what we're currently...
That's our thinking as of now, Jonathan. As you will appreciate, the numbers will be fluid. These are projections.
Yeah.
And we have had 1 quarter of experience under our belt. The first quarter, the numbers were released, I believe, a week or two ago, where the first quarter deficit was $101 million. So my expectation is that given the fairly low number of cases of COVID that we have on the island, the extraordinary expenditures associated with PPE, quarantine facilities, embodiment of the regiment, and those costs will probably reduce significantly. So we're not expecting a repeat of unexpected expenditures coupled with decline in revenue. And so my expectation and my hope is that the experience in the second, third, and fourth quarters from a deficit perspective will be lower, smaller numbers.
So would it be correct?
To zero.
Oh, sorry.
Smaller deficits, in other words.
Could it be correct to call that a best case scenario with the deficit, I suppose?
It represents our best thinking at this point in time with the information that we have available to us.
Right. Oh, thanks.
Hold it. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Minister. We have a huge debt mountain to climb, which went up over 500 million due to the pandemic. You told Bermuda Broadcasting one of the ways you hope to increase national revenue was to attract more companies to base themselves in Bermuda while retaining and hopefully expanding those already here. The 1-year residency certificate has already been rolled out. What else do you have in the pipeline to attract these international businesses?
Well, we have the economic substance regime, which requires companies that decide to base themselves here or be registered here to have substance here. So we have incentives in place for economic substance, which have started to see people put more boots on the ground because they need to have a physical presence on the island. We've talked about the residency program, and we continue to market the island as a jurisdiction where companies would want to locate themselves. We tend to point to the success of the insurance industry, and we speak about how successful they have been in this jurisdiction and as a way of encouraging others to bring themselves here as well.
And are you going to reevaluate anything like work permits or any other factors that may put off potential incoming businesses?
The work permit policy, I wouldn't say is restrictive at the moment. As far as my understanding is that there was a process problem with respect to the time it took to get permits processed. There's been a lot of work that's been done over the course of the last year to try to streamline the process, to even introduce technology as a way of helping to expedite getting permits processed more quickly.
And overseas companies that base themselves here, their workers, often have much higher salaries, better healthcare, and richer lifestyles than the average Bermudian. How, during an election, are you going to sell the idea of increasing the number of wealthy guest workers?
Well, I would say this, Gary, that we have today, I think, about 33,000 people working in our economy. We have taken on incremental debt to get us through the hugely negative effects of this pandemic. In order to get the economy moving again and to get ourselves on the other side of this debt, we're going to need more people contributing to the system. And so we will need more economic activity, which will be brought on by having more people. I would say that fewer people will lead to less economic activity, making the circumstances for us getting out of the economic malaise brought on by COVID more difficult to accomplish. And so it is essential that we have more people contributing, working in the economy to help us move the economy forward, to grow the economy.
The everyday tax of the average Bermudian could be said to be food, healthcare, Belco bills, home debts such as rents or mortgage. Can government work with the banks, the insurance companies, Belco to lower prices, freeze interest, or forgive partial debt? You even said that the subgroup, the young people's subgroup of the Economic Advisory Panel had looked at those ideas, some of those ideas. Can you share any of those?
So the Junior Economic Advisory Committee talked about, with respect to the banking space, the introduction of more competition in the local marketplace is one of their recommendations. They talked about the introduction of a digital bank, one that doesn't have a physical presence, as a way of promoting more competition. You will appreciate that young people do a lot of activities with their telephones, and a number of them have bank accounts that with institutions that don't have physical presences. My own 3 children, 12, 16, and 18, have bank accounts on their phones. So that is a way of improving competition in the marketplace. But this group of people young people were also astute enough to kind of understand that with the introduction of digital and more efficient platforms, there also is some potential fallout. And the fallout is that these organizations are very efficient and don't have a need for lots of employees. And so on one hand, we can get lower pricing. On the other hand, it may result in there being some dislocation, which is why we need to grow the overall economy more broadly speaking. On the issue of mortgages, they talked about the introduction of a product called securitization, which is a very technical finance term. But what it is, in effect, is you package up a group of mortgages and you sell them off to investors. Bermuda's current law doesn't allow non-Bermudians or foreign interests to own real estate in Bermuda without a license. And so they had some ideas around how we could create securitization vehicles. And the ideas require some additional work, some additional research, and maybe even some legislative changes. But they're good ideas just the same to kind of stimulate thinking around how we can potentially introduce some things that are for the betterment of Bermudians in general. What I would say on the banking front is the banks, I think all 4 of them, 3 that actually have local mortgage books, have sought to provide deferments on payments, I think initially for 3 months and then extended for another 3. Our economy has opened up again. There are still people who are suffering, I accept that. But the banks also have an obligation to pay their depositors because the bank's money is not their own. It actually belongs to their depositors, and so they have to pay their folks on the other side as well. And so I think what I've encouraged people to do with the banks is engaging in a conversation with the banks, and I think you will find that banks are more flexible to work with people, and if not, then they need to kind of alert someone in the Consumer Affairs organization. But let the banks know sooner rather than later if you're having difficulty, so they can work with you to figure out a plan. Our hope is that we can get this economy going again, and that way people are back to work, and then they can meet their obligations.
Thank you. My final question would be, you said that three of the public unions had agreed to some economic plans and wage reductions, etc. There are unions that are not, police union, things like that. If other unions don't agree to some of these economic measures, what will you have to do in response to that?
So in my discussions with the unions, because I spent quite a bit of time talking to all three unions plus the associations, so the uniformed services are actually associations. And I advised them of the options that the government had available to itself. We have to rein in the size of the deficit because it is not sustainable, nor is it sustainable for us to continue to borrow large amounts of money to fund deficits. The government, and I stated this before, needs to manage its finances judiciously. So what I've advised the three associations that are not yet agreed, that we may have to implement layoffs in order to get the savings. The Minister for National Security and the Minister for the Cabinet Office is working to try to encourage folks to get across the line. If not, we will have to find cost savings through layoffs.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Minister.